Hello everyone! Today I'm going to be presenting on how to read through an applied journal article for the purposes of your 518 class. To do this, I'm going to be discussing some general guidelines for reading through an article and working through an example with you all. To get started, it would be helpful if you pull up the article you've been provided called Clarifying Inconclusive Functional Analysis Results, Assessment and Treatment of Automatically Reinforced Aggression, so that you can reference it as I'm walking through it with you. We're going to start off with a brief orientation to the whole article. On this front page, you're going to find a lot of information, including information you'll need for the citation. I've highlighted all the information you can find here, including the journal name, the title of the article, the authors, the year it was published, the volume number, the issue number, and the pages related to the journal. Here, I've highlighted the abstract. The abstract gives a general overview about the article and should tell you if the article is relevant to what you're looking for. Next, you're going to scroll through the article and look for line graphs like these. These line graphs will help indicate that it is a single case design, which is the type of research design you will want your articles to use. Next, we'll review the method, functional analysis procedures, treatment procedures, results, and discussion. We will go through these sections in depth in a bit, but here you can see the titles of each section and that they are typically in this order. Here you have the method, the functional analysis, the treatment, the results, and the discussion. Once you become more familiar with looking through these papers, you will be able to quickly look and see if the information you need is present before thoroughly reading the whole paper. Now we're going to talk about the introduction. The introduction is at the very beginning of the article. It gives the history of the research and the background relevant to the study. At the end of the introduction, you will find the research questions and the purpose of the study. So in this article, it specifically says the purpose of the current study, as you can see in the highlights, as a whole, and then it goes on to explain exactly what happens in each of the 4 studies in this article. Here, the first 3 studies are the functional analysis, and the last study is the treatment procedures. The next section is the method section. The method section includes information about the participants, settings, operational definition of the behavior, and the measurement system. There will also be information about the inter-observer agreement, but for the purposes of this class, you don't have to worry about that. Beginning with the participant, you will want to focus on the description of the participant or participants, including their age, the inclusion criteria, behavior skills, and diagnoses. This information is relevant to see in what ways the included participant is similar or dissimilar to your client or student. We see in this article the participant is 5 years old, has severe behaviors, has diagnoses including ASD, disruptive behavior disorder, and pica. He is also ambulatory, nonverbal, and requires assistance for all self-help tasks. Next, we will look at the setting. We care about the setting to see how similar or dissimilar it is to our own setting. Conducting a functional analysis and implementing treatment recommendations can look very different in a school versus a clinic, for example, so it's important to know where the researchers conducted their study. Was it in a school, a therapy room / a clinic, or a home setting? In this article, we can see that it was conducted in a therapy room. Next, we are looking for our operational definitions of the maladaptive or challenging behaviors. This is how the researchers chose to define the behaviors for the purposes of their study. This is specific and individualized to their participants. Here we see there are 2 behaviors of interest, which are aggression and disruption. Aggression is defined as scratching, pinching, hitting, and kicking, and disruption is defined as throwing and hitting or kicking objects. To write these definitions in your article summaries, it would be appropriate to use quotes because of how specific the definitions are. Here is an example of how you can write the definition using quotations, and remember to include the page number when using quotations. Additionally, we see in this section that duration data was collected on item interaction. This data was collected in the treatment study, and because it's not related to the maladaptive or challenging behaviors, we would not include that in our operational definitions. You can see this highlighted in red. For measurement, we are looking for how they collected data on the maladaptive or challenging behavior. This information is sometimes found with the operational definitions, and it is sometimes found with the IOA data. Remember, we don't need to report IOA information. Here we see that sessions lasted 5 minutes and that they collected frequency data on both aggression and disruption. Sometimes the articles are more specific and might say they use, for example, a momentary time sampling to estimate the occurrences of the behaviors. You can include information that is this specific and detailed if it is mentioned. Next are the functional analyses section. This section will explain how the functional analysis or analyses, if there is more than one, were conducted. This article has 3 functional analyses. I chose this article so that you can have the additional practice of looking through each functional analysis description. For each analysis, there is a procedures, conditions, results, and graph. The procedures and conditions sections describe what the functional analysis looked like. This is not information you need to worry about at the undergraduate level. However, if you are interested in a deeper understanding of these assessments, you can read about the procedures here. But at this point, you simply need to focus on the results of the functional analysis, which tell us what was the maintaining function or functions of the challenging behavior. For the last functional analysis in this study, study 3, the results found that the behavior was maintained by automatic reinforcement, or also known as automatically maintained. Additionally, the last sentence of this section leads into the purpose of the treatment. Sometimes the results to the functional analysis are found in the results section, which may be a few pages later. In this case, the article discusses the procedures to the functional analysis and the results of the functional analysis together, and then discusses the procedures to the treatment and the results of the treatment in a results section found on page 326. This is just something to keep in mind when you're looking through articles. Next is the treatment. For the treatment section, your concern is to find a brief description of the treatment recommendation. Here we see that they implemented a competing items treatment. We see that description right here in the yellow. Basically, they provided this participant with access to items that provided similar sensory input as the aggression he was engaging in towards others. Another way to look for the treatment is to look at the graph of the treatment procedures. Whatever is in the first condition is usually considered baseline. Here it is the ignore condition. Then we will look at the condition that comes right after baseline. Here it says CI, which stands for competing items, which is what we just discussed. The rest of these conditions are the researcher's attempt to problem solve how to further decrease the aggression and to see a more stable data pattern. You would not be responsible for describing the rest of the conditions. The last section is the discussion section. The discussion section gives context to the finding and explains how it is applicable to the field, limitations of the study, and recommendations for further research. This section may be helpful in providing some ideas for how this study is applicable to you or your practice. You may talk about why it is relevant to your client or student, or how maybe it would need to be altered to be relevant to your client or student. For example, in this discussion section, it mentions that it is rare for aggression to be maintained automatically. So I might talk about how if I suspected that to be a possible function for my client, this article would be relevant to my client, as it is one of the only research articles discussing aggression as automatically maintained. If you decide to abstract an article because it pertains to your circumstances, the last thing you'll need is a reference. I'm going to walk through how to write a citation for this article. You can see on this slide that I have the front page with all the highlighted information from earlier in the slideshow presentation. The first step to writing a citation is writing the author's names. The article has 3 authors. We are going to write them in order of how they are listed on the article. We write the first author's last name, Samy, followed by a comma and a space, and then the first initial of his first name, V, space, before the next author. We'll do the same thing for the next author. Last name, comma, space. Then we see that this author has their middle initial listed. So next we're going to put their first name initial, B, period, space, then middle initial, D, period, space. Then right before the last author, you're going to use the and symbol, also called the ampersand, followed by a space. Then the last author's last name, comma, space, first name initial, W, period, space, middle initial, period. That is all for the authors. You would follow this pattern for any article you write for a citation. You would just adjust where the ampersand goes based on the number of authors. It always goes before the last author. Next, we are listing the year of publication. After the period from the authors, put a space, and then put the year of the publication in between parentheses, followed by a period and a space. Next is the title of the article. Only the first letter of the first word of the article is capitalized in the citation, no matter what is capitalized in the actual title. However, there are two exceptions. If there's a colon or a dash in the title, like there is right here, there's a colon, where afterwards it says assessment, the first letter of the first word after the colon or dash is capitalized. Everything else is lowercase, followed by a period and a space. Moving on to the journal. This article is in the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis. You capitalize the first letter of every word in the journal name except for the words like of and. The journal name is also italicized, followed by a comma and a space. Next is the volume number. The volume number of this article is 48, and it is italicized and not followed by a space. Next is the issue number, which is in between parentheses and is not italicized, followed by a comma and a space. Then we have the article's page numbers. You'll list the first page number of the article, put a dash, and then the last page number with a period and a space. The last component of the citation is the DOI link. This has to be a live link, meaning it shows up in blue and that you can right-click on it to be directly connected to the article. The easiest way to find this is after you follow the steps that have been listed on the How to Find a Research Article flyer that you've been provided. You'll come to a page on the UKY Library website that looks like this. You can see this is the article title, and if you scroll to the bottom of the page, you'll find a link that looks like this. You can copy this link for your citation. For the purposes of this class, this DOI link is acceptable. However, it should be noted that outside of this class, this DOI link will need to be found without linking through the UKY library. Another way to find a DOI link is to put the article title into Google and click through links of other websites, and sometimes other websites will list it in their citation of the article. You can also look at the APA writing manual for directions on how to write a DOI that you can't find a link for. But for this class, Dr. Shepley is allowing you to list the UKY link because it is generally the easiest way to find the DOI link. The last step for your citation is to indent every line after the first line. The easiest way to do this is to highlight the citation, right-click, then click Paragraph, and then click Hanging Indentation. Here is our final citation, highlighted with all the information, so you can see how we got all this information from the front page and put it all together. Here is the final reference. Thank you all so much for listening. Let me know if you have any questions.